The truck door swung open, and the cold didn't just rush in, it attacked, sharp as knives, stealing breath in an instant. Snow whipped sideways in the headlights, turning the mountain road into a white void. The Navy SEAL had driven this pass dozens of times during training rotations, but tonight felt different. Then he saw her. A large German shepherd stood frozen on the shoulder of the road, fur dusted white, muscles locked tight. Pressed against her legs were two tiny puppies, shaking so badly they could barely stand. In that moment, something inside him clenched harder than it ever had under enemy fire. I share news stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I assure you love it if you keep listening till the end. The wind howled like a living thing, cutting through his gear, numbing his fingers almost instantly. But the dog didn't bark. She didn't growl. She didn't run. She just stared at him, eyes dark, alert, and filled with something he recognized all too well: fear held in check by duty. Those eyes weren't pleading. They were warning him. "Come closer if you must," they said, "but don't touch what's mine." Write in the comments and tell me which part of the world you're watching this story from. I'm really interested to see how far this story has traveled. He stepped down from the truck slowly, boots sinking into fresh snow. Combat had taught him many things: how to read terrain, how to measure threats, how to stay alive. But this was different. This wasn't an enemy. This was a mother standing between death and her children. The puppies whimpered, thin, weak sounds that barely carried over the wind. They were far too small to survive a storm like this. T knew it. And judging by the way the shepherd angled her body just a little more over them, she knew it too. He raised one gloved hand, palm open, the universal signal of peace. His voice came out low and steady, nearly lost in the storm. As he spoke to her the way he'd learned long ago, soft, calm, patient. He told her she was safe. Told her she didn't have to fight anymore. He knew she didn't understand the words, not really. But animals understood tone, intent. They understood when someone meant harm, and when someone didn't. Snow clung to her whiskers. One of the puppies stumbled, its legs giving out as it pressed into her chest. For just a second, her composure cracked. Not enough to make her retreat, but enough for him to see how close she was to collapsing. Exhaustion clung to her like ice. He made a decision, without turning his back on her. He stepped back into the truck and opened the passenger door wide. Warm air spilled out into the storm, the interior light casting a soft golden glow onto the snow. He left it like that, open, inviting, vulnerable. Then he waited. Every instinct in him screamed to act, to move faster, to scoop them up and get them out of the cold. But trust wasn't taken. It was earned. Minutes passed. The wind battered his face. His fingers burned, then went numb. The shepherd didn't move. Her eyes never left him. Then, finally, she took a step forward. She stopped immediately, muscles coiled, ready to retreat. Another step. Then another. Each movement was deliberate, measured, as if she were calculating the risk with every breath. She reached the edge of the open door, heat brushing her face. And that was when he saw it clearly. She was barely holding on. He dropped to one knee in the snow, lowering himself, making his body smaller, less threatening. Gently, he tapped the seat. Not a command, an invitation. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then one of the puppies whimpered again, weaker than before, and its legs buckled completely. The shepherd stiffened. This was the choice. Stay in the storm and lose them, more risk. Everything on a stranger. Her front paws touched the edge of the truck floor. The puppy collapsed fully against her chest. And in that instant, the decision was made. He moved immediately, but carefully, sliding a thick blanket from behind the seat and spreading it across the floor. Snow melted into the fabric as warmth filled the cab. The shepherd nudged her puppies forward, one by one, watching him the entire time, ready to react if he made a single wrong move. She climbed in last before lying down. She turned her head and looked at him not like an animal, but like a being weighing the future, memorizing his face, measuring his soul. Then she curled tightly around her puppies, shielding them even now. He closed the doors slowly, sealing out the storm, and as the heater roared to life, he rested his forehead against the steering wheel, breathing for the first time since he'd stopped, unaware that this single moment on a forgotten road was about to change his life forever. He had survived firefights, ambushes, and missions where every second decided who walked away. Yet as he pulled the truck back onto the mountain road, hands tight on the wheel, nothing had ever made him feel this exposed. The storm raged harder now, wind slamming against the doors, snow erasing the road faster than his headlights could reveal it. Behind him, curled on the blanket, a mother dog and her two fragile puppies breathed softly, 3 lives hanging on a thin line of warmth and time. I share new stories here every day, and I would really appreciate if you hit subscribe and liked my video. I sure you love it if you keep listening till the end. He drove slowly, hazard lights blinking through the whiteout, eyes darting between the road and the shapes behind him. The puppies had begun to stir, tiny bodies twitching as circulation returned to limbs that had been too cold for too long. One squeaked a faint, fragile sound. Dawn crawled unsteadily toward his boot. When its nose pressed against the leather, seeking warmth, something inside his chest cracked open. He swallowed hard, linking against a sting that had nothing to do with the wind. The shepherd lifted her head instantly, alert despite exhaustion. Her eyes followed every movement he made, every shift of his shoulders. She hadn't fully relaxed, not yet. Trust for her was still conditional. He respected that. He spoke quietly again, not looking directly at her this time, letting his voice exist without pressure. Just sound. Just presence. The road twisted downward, trees looming like dark sentinels on either side. Cell service was non-existent. The nearest town was miles away, and he didn't even know if the roadside veterinary clinic he remembered was still operating. But he drove with the same focus he brought to mission: steady, deliberate, refusing to let doubt slow him down. Minutes turned into a tense stretch of time measured by breath and heartbeat. The heater worked overtime, filling the cab with warmth. The puppies, shivering, eased. One rolled clumsily onto its side, belly rising and falling in small, uneven rhythms. The shepherd finally lowered her head again, resting her chin against the seat. Her eyes stayed open, but they were softer now, less sharp, less defensive. When the clinic's faded sign finally appeared through the snow, relief hit him so hard his hands shook. He pulled into the empty lot and jumped out, boots crunching over ice. The building was dark. Closed. He didn't hesitate. He knocked once, twice, harder. The wind stole the sound, so he knocked again, pounding this time. Urgency bleeding through restraint. Lights flickered on inside. A moment later, the door cracked open and a woman's tired face appeared. Confusion turning to shock as she took in the sight him standing in the storm. Arms already moving to lift the puppies, the shepherd watching with tense focus from the truck. There were no questions. No lectures about hours or policies. The door swung open fully. Inside, warmth and fluorescent light replaced the chaos of the storm. The vet moved quickly, hands gentle but efficient, guiding him to a heated kennel. The puppies were examined, first tiny hearts fluttering, temperatures dangerously low but climbing. He stood back, giving space, while the shepherd stayed close to his leg, not touching him but refusing to let him out of her sight. When one puppy let out a stronger squeak, Louder than before, relief washed through the room. The vet nodded once. "They were minutes away," she said quietly. "You got them here just in time." He exhaled a breath he felt like he'd been holding for years. Hours passed. The storm outside softened into silence as dawn crept in through frosted windows. The puppies slept now, full bellies rising and falling in steady rhythm. The shepherd stood beside him, her tail brushing his leg just once, light and uncertain, as if testing whether that contact was allowed. He knelt slowly, bringing himself to her level. She didn't move away. When he met her gaze, there was no fear left in it. Only exhaustion, something else. Recognition, he whispered a promise, then. One he hadn't planned, one that formed without strategy or thought, that she would never have to stand alone again. That her fight was over. The shepherd leaned forward, pressing her forehead gently against his chest. No ceremony, no hesitation. And in that quiet clinic, as the first light of morning broke through the storm, he realized this rescue wasn't just about saving lives, it was about finding his own. He didn't leave the clinic when the sun rose. He told himself it was because the roads were still dangerous, because the storm might return without warning. But deep down, he knew the truth. Walking away felt impossible. The shepherd lay on the floor near the heated kennel, her body finally relaxed, though her ears twitched at every sound. Even in safety, she stayed vigilant. Mothers like her didn't switch off overnight. I share news stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. The vet moved quietly around the room, checking charts, adjusting temperatures. She watched the man for a moment before speaking. "She's not a stray," she said gently. "You can tell by how she holds herself. She belonged to someone once." He nodded. He had seen it too, the discipline in her posture, the intelligence in her eyes, the way she assessed rooms, the way trained operators assessed threats. This dog had known structure, commands, purpose. Something had happened to tear that away. Later, while the puppies slept, the shepherd finally ate. Though she kept glancing toward the kennel between bites, he sat on the floor a few feet away, back against the wall, giving her space. Every movement was deliberate, respectful. Over time, she crept closer on her own, until her shoulder brushed his knee. The contact was brief, but intentional. Images surfaced in his mind, faces from missions past. Teammates he hadn't saved, moments where hesitation had cost lives. He had carried those memories like weight, armor he never took off. But sitting there, listening to the quiet breathing of 3 survivors, something shifted. This wasn't a mission. There were no orders, no extraction, just choice. When the puppies woke again, stronger now, they tumbled clumsily against each other, squeaking loudly enough to make the vets smile. The shepherd watched them with soft intensity, nudging one back when it wandered too far. Her tail moved slowly, cautiously, like she was rediscovering how to exist, without fear pressing in on all sides. The vet approached him later with paperwork in hand. "Animal control will be notified," she said. "Standard procedure. But if no one comes forward..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. He looked at the shepherd. She was watching him too. That night, he slept in a chair beside the kennel. Dreams came in fragments: snow, headlights, the sound of wind, but they didn't carry the usual panic. When he awoke, a warm weight rested against his boot. One puppy had crawled free and fallen asleep there. The shepherd didn't stop it. She just watched him, eyes calm, as if she'd already decided something important by morning. The storm had cleared completely. Blue sky stretched over snow-draped pines, the world scrubbed clean. The vet delivered the final news with a smile. "They're going to be okay. All of them." His throat tightened. He crouched down, pressing his forehead briefly to the cool tile floor. overwhelmed by relief. When he stood, the shepherd stepped forward and placed her paw on his boot. Solid and steady, days passed quickly after that. Arrangements were made. Calls went unanswered. No owner came. No report matched her description. Each day, the shepherd grew more relaxed in his presence. Following him through the clinic, lying beside him as if she'd always belonged there. When the vet finally asked the question outright, he didn't hesitate. Yes, he said simply. That evening, as he loaded the truck again, this time with blankets, supplies, and a cardboard box lined with towels, the shepherd jumped in on her own. She circled once, then lay down, puppies tucked close. Before closing the door, he paused. "Welcome home," he whispered. She looked up at him, eyes bright, tail thumping once against the seat, and for the first time in a long while. The road ahead didn't feel empty. The drive away from the clinic felt nothing like the drive that had brought them there. The road was still narrow, still winding through snow-covered pines, but the silence inside the truck had changed. It was no longer tense or fearful. It was full. The shepherd lay stretched across his seat, puppies nestled against her belly, their small bodies rising and falling in steady rhythm. Every now and then, she lifted her head to look at him, as if checking that this new reality was still real. I share new stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. When they reached his cabin, the sun was already dipping behind the mountains, casting long golden shadows across the snow. It wasn't a large place, just one room, a kitchen, and a fireplace that hadn't been used in weeks. But it was warm, safe. He set up blankets near the fire, careful to give the shepherd space. She explored slowly, nose working, cataloging every sound and scent. This was unfamiliar territory, but there was no fear in her movements, only cautious curiosity. The puppies discovered the world in bursts of clumsy enthusiasm. They tumbled over each other, squeaked, and wagged tails that barely worked yet. Watching them, he felt a strange lightness settle in his chest. These small, ordinary moments were something he had missed for years without realizing it. That night, the shepherd chose her place without hesitation. She lay down beside the fireplace, positioning herself so she could see both the door and him. Protective instinct never slept, but neither did trust. When he finally sat down on the floor across from her, she rested her head on her paws and closed her eyes, fully at peace. Days turned into weeks. The puppies grew stronger, louder, bolder. They learned the yard, the smell of pine, the rhythm of his footsteps. The shepherd stayed close, always watching, but her tail wagged freely now. She followed him everywhere, a silent shadow with warm eyes and an unbreakable presence. People noticed the change in him, too. When he went into town, he smiled more. He spoke more. The weight he had carried for so long began to lift, piece by piece. The nightmares faded. When they came, a warm body and steady breathing anchored him back to the present. One evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sky darken, the shepherd approached and sat beside him. She leaned into his leg, solid and sure. He rested a hand on her head, fingers sinking into thick fur, and realized how natural it felt, like something that had been missing had finally been returned. He never tried to rename her. She didn't need it. Some bonds didn't require labels. Spring came softly, melting snow into rushing streams. The puppies were placed with good families, one by one, each goodbye bittersweet. The shepherd watched them leave without distress, her job done, her purpose fulfilled. When the last one was gone, she stayed close to him. No longer a guardian standing watch over survival, but a companion walking into life. On the anniversary of that storm, Pete drove the same mountain road again. He stopped where the headlights had first caught her shape in the snow. The shepherd stood beside him, wind tugging at her fur, eyes calm. The road looked ordinary now, harmless. But he knew better. Some moments change everything. He knelt and pressed his forehead to hers, whispering thanks for her courage, her trust, her refusal to give up. She answered by nudging his chest gently, a simple gesture that said enough. They walked back to the truck together, not as rescuer and rescued, but as family. Thanks for watching. Till end, please like and subscribe my channel. I will be very thankful to you.